Okay, go.
So my name's Martin Parsons, and I've written this book, Christianity in the First Millennium, its Arrival and Survival on Mersea, Britain's most easterly inhabited island. Now, this afternoon we are on top of the church tower of St Peter and St Paul's Church in West Mersea, and all around us you can see the area that this book is talking about. This area was incredibly important, not just to our local story, but also to our national story as a country. In front of me, 9 miles away, is Colchester, the first Roman city in the country. It's also an area that's got literally hundreds of Romano-British Christian graves. It's also got the remains of the first known Christian church in the country, which you can still see. And because there is a Roman road going from Colchester right down to Mersea, and behind me linking up to the Roman shore fort at Bradwell, it's very likely that Christianity arrived here on Mersea at a very early date. Over there we've got the open sea at the mouth of the Blackwater estuary. 2 generations after the Roman legions had left in the mid-5th century, this area was invaded from that direction by hordes of pagan Anglo-Saxons. Now, we know from the earliest accounts of church history written by the monk Gildas and also by Bede that they literally destroyed churches wherever they went. In fact, Bede tells us that virtually the whole of organised Christianity in Eastern England and the Midlands was wiped out. Christianity hung on by a thread. And yet behind me we've also got, just in the distance there, you can see St Peter's Church, Bradwell. And that marks the site of the Anglo-Saxon monastery where a Northumbrian monk called Cedd came down from the island monastery of Lindisfarne and used that as a base from which to re-evangelise the whole rural area of what we now call Essex. Now, one thing we do know about Celtic monks, they had a real liking for islands. Cedd came from Lindisfarne, and so sitting opposite Mersea Island, across the Blackwater there, Mersea would almost certainly have been one of the first places they came and preached at. And so Christianity was re-established in this area we now call Essex. But about 150 years later, 793, we had the Viking attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne, where Cedd himself had earlier come from. This was the equivalent of the 9/11 attack in the first millennium. It literally, the shockwaves reverberated right across Europe. Not only that, but there were Viking attacks year after year on major monasteries, on churches, and the east coast of England suffered particularly. Christianity, in terms of organised Christianity, was virtually wiped out in large parts of East Anglia and parts of Essex. This area literally became the front line between pagan Viking attacks and Christian England at that time. In 991, we had a huge fleet, 93 Viking ships that sailed up past there, past the mouth of the Blackwater estuary, en route to Ipswich, which they then pillaged and destroyed. They then turned round, and coming back here, they then entered the Blackwater estuary. They sailed down past Mersea. You must imagine the fear that the people on Mersea would have felt at that time, seeing these 93 Viking ships sailing past, people they regarded as terrorists who had attacked and murdered and pillaged them. At that time we find that the Ealdorman of Essex called out the feared, the local equivalent of the army reserves. Mersea men would have been running down the Blackwater estuary to try and get ahead of them before the Vikings landed. Tragically, Britnoff, the Ealdorman, was himself killed in the ensuing Battle of Maldon. Yet, only a generation later, the Viking leader Canute converted to Christianity. At that point, the Viking attacks stopped. The Vikings became Christians. They no longer attacked churches or anywhere else. Not only that, we find that churches were being rebuilt at that time.